Hello and welcome into the latest edition of PL Express. Janusz, Michallik and Kate Murray here with you, as always, every Monday, looking back on what was in the Premier League weekend. Arsenal still 5 points clear at the top of the table. It was a five-star performance from Mikel Arteta's men as well. It is fair to say we're going to throw it forward. We're going to talk about what it all means and the run that they've got ahead. But I think something that really stood out, Janusz, was the fact that there didn't seem to be any nerves whatsoever in this side.
No, and right from the beginning, you have to look at this game against Fulham. Some will say it's just Fulham, but you still have to beat them, obviously. But when at the moment, when I compare Arsenal and Manchester City, you have to say that Arsenal are the team that's playing like champions. You have to say it. And, obviously Arsenal fans will be worried about Manchester City in a way that they haven't been at their best by any means. And what happens if they start clicking? They haven't been at their best, but look where they are. There's still a game to be played. Obviously, Manchester City will host Arsenal. But as I said, at this moment, you're looking at the next couple of games. And for me, the next couple of games for Arsenal are Palace and Leeds at home. And that's how you're going to judge who's going to win it. So I'll tell you what, for me, Arsenal right now, our appointment viewing. I mean, what they're doing is incredible. Even when there's a setback, they continue to play the same way. They entertain, they create ton of chances. And for a while there, we were talking about maybe lack of depth, and look what happens. Trossard comes in, has a tremendous game. Gabriel Jesus is coming back right now. Who knows? Maybe Trossard will keep him on the bench. And Nketiah still contributes, right, when he's available. And so you look at this team, and from top to bottom, they're pretty good. And maybe, just maybe, they're ready for that run-in the end with all players that are going to be healthy.
What's your feeling then about Gabriel Jesus being back and what's going to happen now?
Well, I mean, I think it's a positive. We were saying when he got injured that, who's going to fill in? And Nketiah, you know how I feel about him. I don't think he's maybe a replacement for him, but I think you have an incredible rotation there because Trossard playing through the middle, it's one thing. But as we know, he can play wide. So if Martinelli has an off game, you can play him there. If you need to play Gabriel Jesus, you can always play him in wide positions. We've seen it at Manchester City, although that's not ideal. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a rotation depending on the game, depending on the opponent. I think Gabriel Jesus deserved a chance after a long injury to come back in the lineup and get a legitimate chance. I never felt that injury should you should play himself out. But I think you're not going to see Trossard being dropped in the next game. No chance. Not after a game.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting situation to see, but not a bad thing that Mikel Arteta has to deal with. Now, just something that you just said there is, I suppose you can look at it both ways. You said that Arsenal looked like champions this weekend, and obviously we saw City with a tight 1-0 win. Is that something of a concern, though, that City don't even seem to be at their best and they're still right up there close to Arsenal with them still to play as well?
That's why I've been reluctant to give it to Arsenal, but go and claim that title. That's all I have to say, because it's there for you. I mean, who knows if Manchester City will click at some point, right? I mean, they haven't had those runs like they did in the past. We've seen 10, 12, 15, 18 games unbeaten, or even a big, just as big a winning streaks. That's what it's going to take right now. But I think one game at a time, and that pressure is real. And I think it's real because I think Pep Guardiola knows that Manchester City are going to have to be nearly perfect for the rest of the season. And even though they've done it in the past, he's going to look across the bench and see, almost himself in Mikel Arteta, understanding how to navigate that. And if Pep Guardiola is watching this Arsenal team, he'd think back and say, these are my Manchester City teams at their best. I mean, how scary is that to look across and see Arsenal playing flawless football all over the pitch? You saw that goal, I think, was it the second or third, where I think the Martinelli's goal, where it was just absolutely incredible. I don't remember how many passes were there, but the composure, the calmness in the back, getting out of pressure, the patience, and then finally the finish after Alejandro Trossard's cross was breathtaking.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting as well, you say, because I saw somebody talking about how Arteta, just his intensity never drops either. So even when there's a win like that, if he sees for a minute the players are just taking their eye off the ball that quick second, or he feels that they're not fully focused in every single second, he's onto them straight away. Even on the sideline, we're seeing that from them. And I suppose you really need that with a young side like this, Janusz.
You do and you don't, because I think there's a hunger and there's a purpose in this team. Trust me, they understand where they are. They didn't expect it to be that way. They probably didn't think it was going to come together as well as it did. But I think they understand it. Of course, it helps that Arteta sees and reacts when there is when there's a moment in games where maybe things aren't going their way and maybe he doesn't see that sense of urgency. But I haven't seen that. I see that sense of urgency in every game from Arsenal.
So let's just say they do stay perfect. We're doing hypotheticals now here because we are going to throw it forward. And given the fact that we do have the 5 points between Arsenal and Man City, and they are still to face one another, let's just imagine Arsenal and Man City win every game up until that point. And so we're going into that, and it is that 5 points gap. And let's just say Manchester City do win that, and then that points gap is reduced. Just with the games that are coming, I want you to tell me if you think there would be any concern for Arsenal after that. So there would be at home to Chelsea after that game, then away to Newcastle, then at home to Brighton, then away to Nottingham Forest, and then at home against Wolves. Would there be any games there where you think worrying?
Of course. I mean, you look at the big names, and that's what you see. Teams that are capable on any given day to come good, just like Chelsea. We were so down on Chelsea for a while. Now they've won 3 games. Things are coming together. Why? Because key players are coming back, and key players are playing a little bit better. But, we've seen, I look at the Bournemouth, I look at Southampton. I mean, they have just as much to play. It's almost easier to get up for a big team than it is for a smaller team. Just ask Liverpool. Manchester United 7-0. Look what happens in Bournemouth. So I just think you've mentioned that urgency from Arteta and the team. It's easy to know that you play in City, Chelsea, the big teams. You don't need your manager to remind you what's at stake here. And I think you play at your best against those teams because you want to prove it that you're the best, right? In order to be the best, you have to beat the best, as we've often said it. So yes, those games are tougher on paper. But I don't know that at the end of the season, I would have looked at the likes of West Ham, Everton, Leeds, Southampton, Bournemouth, home or away, and say to myself, that's good. That's easier. It just doesn't work that way. So on paper, I get your point. The schedule of Arsenal is much, much tougher. I do believe that when they play Manchester City, when it comes to that game, I don't think Arsenal will drop points. I think, if you look at it, I think they need to beat Palace and Leeds at home. I think they will. And, I look at Manchester City playing Liverpool. Yeah, we don't know what we're going to get from Liverpool. But just looking at that, I think there's going to be 5-point difference. And Arsenal will be able to afford perhaps a draw, maybe even a loss against Manchester City.
So let's talk a little bit more before we move on from Arsenal about Leandro Trossard. What's gone so right for him? Why has he been such a great fit in this Arsenal side?
Well, it's his type of team for once, and he understands the league. He's already a proven player. Many are comparing now, Mudryk and him, who was a better buy, even though Arsenal really wanted Mudryk. By the way, Mudryk looked good for Chelsea as a false number 9. Who knows? Maybe he would have been fine at Arsenal as well, because he played through the middle of the last game and looked pretty good. But we have to remember that Leandro Trossard has proven himself in multiple positions. He's good in combination play. He knows how to play in between the lines. And we saw that interchangeability between him and Martinelli. It's great because as a defender, you have to wonder who's pulling you in and out. And remember, he's almost perfect for Gabriel Jesus, because before Leandro Trossard came to Arsenal, we said, well, Nketiah can score, but he can drag players out of positions. He's not really comfortable in playing a little bit deeper or wider. And now you have Leandro Trossard, who already did that for Graham Potter, if you remember, at Brighton, playing false 9 at times. So I think mostly, though, I know I've said a lot, but mostly understanding the league and already proving that you're good enough to play in this league.
Yeah, it's been great to see. It's been really fun to watch as well, this Arsenal side. That's fair to say. Manchester United, it's an interesting run that we've seen from them of late because, well, I'd say more than interesting, quite shocking when you think of that result at Anfield, 7-0, which nobody would have expected. Then they bounced back in the Europa League. And then we see that game at the weekend where obviously you have to put in the big caveat that is Casemiro getting a red card in this clash and it finishing 0-0. Are they on a downward trend?
No, no, they're not. Look, I mean, they had a brief window to join the title race, but we felt that they needed to be perfect, right? And obviously, Liverpool has derailed those plans. And I kind of said at that time when they were at their best and kind of clawing themselves back to that title run, that may be unrealistic, but I think if they were to continue that without any setbacks, I really believe that Manchester United would be in the conversation. I think Arsenal and Manchester City are kind of doing their job, so maybe that was always going to be difficult. But make no mistake, nothing changes for me when I look at Manchester United. They will finish in top four, not easy. Obviously, Newcastle and Spurs are kind of, getting back to that after some, bad games or soft patches. But this is a sleeping giant that has been awakened, Manchester United, and top four. That's all they need. They have a title already. They have two competitions that they can still win trophies. And come next year, they're going to be one of the favorites, and who knows, maybe even the favorite. So nothing changes for me. Obviously, they've shown in a way that the Liverpool result was a one-off. We saw that against Betis. This obviously is unfortunate in many ways, but I think the Casemiro's red card greatly impacted that side. And even with 10 men, they looked the part at times. They have some issues that they'll fix in the offseason, but nothing changes for me in terms of Manchester United being back at their best.
Nothing changes, you say, but you just said top four rather than top three, which I feel many have been saying. And I'm not just saying that you were saying that it would be top three for them.
Makes no difference. 3 or 4 makes no difference.
It doesn't make a difference, but do you see them holding on to top three rather than top four?
Sure.
Because there's pressure now.
There is pressure in third or fourth. I think, Manchester United ahead of the season, they would have, be very, very happy being top four, even the beginning of the season, without knowing what Ten Hag may or may not do. The Ronaldo situation, losing to Brentford 4-0, where some said, well, maybe Ten Hag's not good enough. I don't think it makes an iota of difference if they finish third or fourth. I mean, really, there isn't a difference. All you need to do is get in the Champions League and get ready for next season with everything that Ten Hag has accomplished so far right now, and with the transfer window and, addressing 2 or 3 needs for Manchester United. Again, I think United are on the way to be a title contender next season. And that's all that matters. 1 trophy in the bag and possible 2 others. Pretty good season considering.
So Casemiro's absence, actually made a mistake yesterday, missing the FA Cup game, because he'll miss that FA Cup game, first of all, against Fulham, then Newcastle, Brentford and Everton. He would be back for the Nottingham Forest game if nothing changes in the meantime with that 4-match ban. How costly will his absence be? And does that mean the return of McFred?
Well, it's going to be costly. We've seen what he's done for this team. It's obviously playing out, that team is absolutely different, especially now with, I don't know if that idea is going to continue with Bruno Fernandes playing kind of next to him. He did that with Christian Eriksen, right? I mean, Christian Eriksen was kind of holding midfielder, but with the freedom to create and do almost anything he wants, because Casemiro would sweep everything in behind him. So, that changes things. There's no questions about that for them. He's a big loss. That's already his second red card, and previously, Kay, if you remember, I don't think he's gotten any at Real Madrid, has he? I mean, he's always
he did get a few, but it was double yellows that got him sent off. And obviously he did always walk a fine line, as you know, and they used to say, how did he not get sent off?
But in that position, you almost has to, right? I mean, if you're a player that plays in that position at the highest level of football, and you don't get, don't get a red card, you don't miss time tackles. I mean, you can't play that position. That's what it requires. Now, not condoning anything yesterday. I mean, I think he knew everybody else was almost okay. I don't think it was intentional. He was very, very late. It looked a lot worse on the, on the replay, I suppose, but that's what VAR is for, right? If you check in slow motion, and that didn't look good. It was right, in my opinion, to give him a red card for that, but it's a big loss. I mean, Casemiro has become an anchor to everything that Manchester United do well, and so you're always going to miss a player like that.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens in the midfield for Manchester United in these upcoming games as they look to bounce back from what's been a difficult couple of games for them in the Premier League. And just because there's been some interesting results this weekend in Spurs with a 3-1 win over Forest, Liverpool losing after that massive result at Anfield against Manchester United. There was a feeling, particularly on the FC show this week, and I hold my hands up, I'm among them, that we had to say which team was going to make the top four with the two Manchester sides and Arsenal. And everybody suddenly changed. Everybody was unanimous in saying it's going to be Liverpool, even though Spurs were holding on to that fourth spot when we were all asked. After the weekend's results, what are your thoughts on who's going to make up that top four?
Well, I mean, there's so many unknowns about Liverpool and Spurs because they've been so inconsistent. And one team that, in my opinion, has been consistent are Newcastle United, even though they had a long run of, of patchy results, to say the least. Not necessarily losses, but a lot of draws as well, and almost look as if they took themselves out. The one thing that I like about Newcastle is their consistency and defensive record. I mean, it's incredible. They're the best defensive team. And in a run-in like this, you can almost count that they're not going to be losing games. Alexander Isak scoring and looking good. It's a massive bonus because we all know that it's probably the bad run is due to that because they don't have a bona fide goal scorer. And I'm not saying that Isak is one, but at least he gives you hope. Miguel Almiron, a wonderful goal. I mean, he's had remember that spell where he scored in like 6 or 7 goals, and obviously benched in this game because he hasn't been in his best, when I say that, in terms of scoring, because the work ethic is second to none, and that smile on his face, the love of St. James's Park, it's special between those two players. So that's a bonus for him to come and show, listen, it's not going to be easy to put me on the bench. So I like Newcastle United from that standpoint. I really like teams that are so solid defensively. And now that Guimaraes is back, I think the bad form coincided with the fact that he was out for, 3 or 4 games. So I like them the most because Spurs are inconsistent. We don't know what we're going to get from week to week. And same can be said about Liverpool.
All right. So you're going for Newcastle as it stands right now.
It stands right now, yes.
Let's see what you got to say about Chelsea. They got another win, this time against Leicester. 3-1 it finished. That made it a 3rd straight win for them. If I asked if Manchester United were on a downward trend, are they on an upward trend? Is this it? Is this the turning point for Potter's Chelsea?
Well, I mean, I think everybody's been extremely hard or harsh on Graham Potter. That doesn't change. He doesn't have an easy job. But I've always said about teams is that there always comes a time where you're going to bounce. Yes, you can say pressure's off, and certainly pressure's off in the not Champions League. We'll get to that later, in the Premier League. But I think key players are coming back, and you can see the difference in quality almost immediately. Look at Wesley Fofana in the last couple of games, couple of goals. I mean, tremendous. Almost is making Koulibaly look better. Think about that. You would have thought that Koulibaly, with all his experience at Napoli and at the international level as well in the Champions League, would be the one. But it's the other way around. Ben Chilwell, as I've said, to me, the best left-sided players in this league. Not because he's great in one-on-ones, not because he's super fast. It's because he's tactically aware. He's super smart. He knows when to get involved. I mean, and you can see how much they've missed him. And those are long-term injuries, right, so to a lot of these players. And even in this last game, without Sterling, who was looking good, without Reece James, they showed quality, and now they've won 3 games on the trot. So I think things are looking up. It doesn't change anything. Remember, you and I on this show throughout the season have been talking, what's going to save Graham Potter? It's going to have to be what he does from, say, a month ago until the end of the season. Are they going to see progress like Arsenal did under Mikel Arteta a couple of seasons back? And this is the moment. So he's got to take full advantage of that. 3 wins right now. He's getting some players back. Players are coming into a good form. Mudryk, that was pretty good, playing through the middle. A little bit of a surprise, but he looked very, very good. Kai Havertz, all of a sudden, is looking good, playing a little bit deeper. Almost having that, I know it's just a 1 game, but that partnership with Mudryk was good. We'll see. Mudryk needed time. I absolutely agree with Graham Potter not to force him in. Remember, he wasn't training for a long, long time before his transfer, so he needs a little bit of time. So things are looking good. Champions League is going to be important, isn't it?
Okay, so you've mentioned the Champions League, so let's go there, because why would we bet against this Chelsea team, given the fact that it's a knockout competition and given their own pedigree in the tournament, particularly in, let's say, just over the last decade?
Yeah, why would we, right? Seeing what Thomas Tuchel has done when he came in January and Chelsea won it. I know it was a different team. There was a lot more stability and maybe a little bit more quality in terms of experience for that. So I'm certainly not comparing that run to this Chelsea. But why not? Why not? I mean, we'll see what the draw is going to be. There are a couple of teams that certainly we all think that Chelsea are capable of navigating through. And again, look, I mean, it's easy to mention Milan or Benfica, but those two teams are playing very, very well. So it's not going to be walk in the park. But even against bigger teams, why not? 2 games, no pressure in the Premier League. Say they negotiate their way to the semifinal. Well, just a couple of games away from the final, and that would make it for a great season. Well, not great season, but very good end to the season. It would give confidence of Todd Bowley to Graham Potter, a confidence that's unwavering, really. And it could be. I mean, we all thought that, my goodness, when they're going to pull the trigger. So I have some faith in Chelsea. They probably want to avoid Bayern and Real Madrid, I would think, but why not?
So you're not ruling out Chelsea winning the Champions League?
And no, I'm not going to go as far as that. But
well, you're not ruling it out. It's fair to say you're not saying they're going to win it, but you're not ruling it out, right?
No, I'm not. I like what's happening right now, and let's just wait. Ask me this again next Monday, because we're going to know the opponent, and that's of course always important, because I don't think against Bayern Munich or Real Madrid this team is ready to go through.
But then again, it's the Champions League, so you never know. Anyway, that will wrap it up for the latest edition of PL Express. Thank you, as always, for joining us, and we'll see you next week to ask Janusz some more questions like this.
Thank you very much for watching ESPN FC on YouTube. For more highlights, analysis, and exclusive content, be sure to subscribe.